what I offered is 10, 15 minutes just on demystifying the term Kanban and the method itself. This is a Kanban. You might not realize it by just looking at it, but Toyota, who is the pioneer in actually trying out the technique, they build cars. And on this card is all the information to build one part of a car. And as you can see, there's a lot of information. These barcodes, you can read them and see a whole bunch of stuff. The whole concept of Kanban is the ability to visualize on a card everything you need to accomplish something. So in the terms of manufacturing, it might be building a car. But in the term of knowledge working, it might be just completing a course. So this is what Kanban is. And I want to make sure we start there because everything you do in Kanban is just a card. Okay? So I won't go through the mechanism of the Toyota production system, but it exists. I will briefly tell you about these 4 principles. Remember, principles are not like values. They're at play whether you believe in them or not. So even if you don't remember any of these 4 things, doesn't matter because they will be there. The whole concept in Kanban is to start with what you do now. And why is that important? Is because it is really non-intrusive. We just talk to people and say, hey, you're good at something. Show me what you do. Number 2 is we cut a deal. If I'm going to just let you keep doing what you're doing, I need to agree with you that you will agree to improve as you go. That's it. I'm just asking you that there probably are always better ways of doing it. I will respect everything, your current roles, your current processes. In fact, I need them because I will take those and visualize them on these little Kanban systems. And lastly, the ability for me, be very careful. There's words that we use sometimes as synonyms and they're not. Management and leaderships are not synonyms. For me, leadership is something that can be emerging, and anyone in an organization, even someone who started yesterday for your company or someone who's been there for 20 years can be a leader. So pushing for acts of leadership at every level is very important in a Kanban system. So these principles, even if you forget them, they will be at play at any time in a Kanban situation. These are the 5 things you need to know. Now these, instead of boring you through the slide, I will illustrate them through a little story. The 5 things are simple. You must visualize your work. And I won't go all law of attraction on you and the book, The Secret and all that stuff, but there's something to be said about what would happen if every morning you actually stared at your goal. I guarantee you that if you do it every morning, I don't know if you build vision boards, often vision boards are very interesting because you just look at them and suddenly they happen. Okay? And there's no magic, there's no voodoo, it's just visualization. Okay? Limiting your WIP. So WIP is a word you're going to hear me say it many times. It's just a question of being able to say, I have limited capacity, and also I want to stay focused. So you must limit your WIP, and I'll show you that in a second. The big one is you can't do something if you're not going to measure it. So the whole concept of a Kanban system is the ability to measure what you're doing so that when you introduce a change in a system, you can say, well, that change happened at this time, and it went in the wrong direction, or it went in the right direction. Measuring and managing your flow of work is how you continuously improve the way you work. Okay, a Kanban scheme is always evolving to becoming better and better. Making the process explicit is very simple. It's the concept of if I'm going to expect people to follow something, I might as well just tell them. Why would I hide it in a book somewhere? How about I just put it directly in the board that they're going to be using? So I'm going to illustrate that too in a second. And the 5th one is Kaizen. So another Japanese term, but this one stands for change for better or continuous improvement. You are not allowed to call yourself a Kanban team if you don't practice Kaizen. Okay. So here's a story. I have a daughter, she's now 22, but when she was 6, I used to pick her up on Fridays. She would spend the weekend with me at home, and then on Sunday, her mom would pick her back up. And sometimes on Sundays, her mom would say, honey, what'd you do this weekend? And my wonderful daughter, Chloe, would go, nothing. And I was like, what? That's it. Kanban board in the kitchen. You will list your goals for the weekend. We will pull them on the board, and whatever hits the done column is the answer to mommy. Are we clear? This is a real story. So we did go to the pharmacy and bought one of those white boards, right, that you use in school to do projects. We put 3 columns to do in progress stuff. We listed her goals for the weekends. She was 6, so I softened the language a little bit, but I left her with a bunch of stickies and Sharpies, and I said, honey, just write what you want to do this weekend. Go see a movie, get some ice cream, and feed the ducks. We had a pond not far from the house, and we had Cheerios, and we just put them at the ducks, and we loved it. So the goals were listed on Friday. And I mentioned also that it was strategic position in the kitchen. Why was it in the kitchen?
If you would see it often.
So every day, multiple times a day, she would have to see the board. So on Friday, she had to list her goals for the weekend. She had 3. And then we would fill them on the board. On Saturday, we decided to pull the first card, which was going to the movies. We got lucky. There was an ice cream parlor right next to the movie. So we knocked out 2 cards on Saturday. All that was left on Sunday was feeding the ducks, which was fine because we just took our Cheerios and walked to the pond and threw some in there and had fun. On Sunday, that was the answer to mine. So this process, which sounds very simple, right, is how I introduced it. And the reason it worked is because, do you believe that a team of 2 people can achieve 3 things over a weekend? I mean, you want to try it out, see if it works. And when you realize that it works, then you keep doing it again. So my wonderful daughter, Chloe, told me, you know what, Daddy? I love this Kanban stuff. This board is magical. I just write stuff on a card on Friday, and 2 days later, it happens. Disneyland every weekend. And she went berserk. She now wanted to do 20 things a weekend. So the problem is that the board started looking like this, and that's not possible in Kanban. So we had to cut 2 deals. 1, Disneyland, it's not a weekend thing. It's at least a 3 or 4 day thing, and it's once a year. Is everyone clear that after I cut this deal, I had to go to Disneyland once a year? So that's the problem cutting deals with your business partners or daughters, is that once you make the deal, you have to stick to it. So Disneyland was solved. Second, we have proven that we were able to do 3 cards. Why would we try to do 20? And is everyone clear with children that when you tell them you're going to go with ice cream, that's a promise? And then there's tears involved and the promise is not fulfilled. So if we're going to sign up for work, it has to be realistic. So the first thing we're going to do to our Kanban board is start putting some weight limit. We are going to start putting limits on ourselves, which are these little stop signs that just say, listen, I don't think we should be able to do more than 7 cards. What is my super formula on this? I didn't invent it. It's how many people you have on your team times 2 minus 1. And then you spread that number across your WIP columns. There is way more advanced ways of doing it. But the reason I do it like this is I want to make sure that people understand that I'm just messing with at least 1 person on the team that won't be able to have more than 1 card. I would prefer everyone at 1 card. But I know sometimes people need a little bit of distraction. 2 cards. Okay, so once you know the size of your team and you spread that limit on your board, you have your WIP limits. Now you did notice that my board evolved. It had a new column now. Well, my daughter turned 15. And at 15, they like going to the movies again. And I don't know about you guys, but 15-year-old girls, it's like a project plan to go to a movie. So one day, Daddy was driving and got her in front of the theater. And she goes, Daddy, wrong theater. And I think you're supposed to pick up my girlfriend. That's it. We have a board problem. We have to go back home, fix our Kanban board. Daddy is no longer driving all around town. I need a ready column for you to think before I drive. I often build boards where my first columns on the board are thinking columns and my future column on the board are doing columns. In software, 80% of software is thinking. So you want to have thinking columns before you actually do stuff. So at this point, here's how well trained she was the next weekend. Daddy, the movie is Hunger Games. The friend's name is Faith. I need $20 for the popcorns. You have to drop us off, but don't worry, her parents are dropping me back home. That was all discovered in the ready column. She was not allowed to move the card out of the ready column until she had thought of these things. Once it hits the ready column, Daddy is fine driving her wherever she wants. Does anyone know what I did as a very lazy IT guy when she turned 16 to improve my process? I gave her my car because it was much easier. I didn't have to drive her anymore, and she could do things that were in her purview. And I focused on what I called quality time, which was other things than me just driving her around town. Make sense? And in software, that's what would be called the consequence of Agile, which is called DevOps, which would be the ability to automate a lot of your processes and automation and testing. And that's again, a consequence or a continuation of improving your systems. Okay. So giving your card to your daughter is an improvement in some regards. So at this point, you have your board, it's evolving, and that's the key. Your first board is not going to be great. It's going to be a starting point, but you will keep adding columns until the point that your team feels that we have the right flow of work. And now you've got a board with more columns. We're almost done. The entire concept behind this is this pull system. And we've heard that word said a couple of times. The idea is that you are not allowed to take on more work if you haven't finished something. So the idea in a Kanban system is these WIP limits are meant to be respected, which means when your board is full at 7 cards, no matter who screams at you or who tells you you have to get something done right now, it ain't gonna happen until you complete something first. So when we work with executives, we always give them the mantra of stop starting, start finishing. You're not allowed, I don't care how much money is involved, I don't care who's telling you to do it, you are not allowed to do it. You are gonna hurt yourself and actually become counterproductive if you take on that next card. So how does it work? The pink card moves to done. It creates a void. You don't have to fill it right now, but you have space to fill it. You need to go to the previous column and say, do I have anything there that's ready? Yeah, I got one thing, pull it in. Now it creates a void in this column. And now you can ask yourself, well, should I fill it out? Sure, go look to your first column and pull it out. So this pull system means that the team self-governs and declares their capacity so that they're able to really stay at a sustainable pace. And if they go over that pace, there will be breakdown. So often humans don't like it when I say this, but every team is a little factory. And what happens to a factory that builds 5 widgets when you keep pushing it beyond its limit to build 10 widgets? It breaks down. Yep. Humans break down too. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that we understand these WIP limits and that we respect them so that we can be more consistent at expecting what can be produced, right? Whether it's in a factory, in a classroom, or in a software team. And that's it. As you continue, you will have established your team capacity, which is very important. You will have a system to pull work, and you will continuously improve your flow of work, and you have built yourself a Kanban system, and that is it. That was the whole technique on its own. Make sense?
15 minutes, now we're all after.
Does that help a little bit? Because I promise you, you don't need more. There's only 5 things to do. That's it. The 5 things I gave you.